This is the process shot. I'm Michael. I'm stuck in a haunted movie theater, and I've seen Tromeo and Juliet, a dark romantic comedy from Lloyd Kaufman made back in 1996. It's an extremely crass adaptation of the Shakespeare play, though it does keep to the most familiar parts of the original story of star-crossed lovers caught up in a family rivalry. This contemporary update changes the setting to New York, injects a lot of sex and violence into the story, and caps it all off with a good amount of punk rock attitude and a great amount of respect for the source material. Well, there's about as much respect as it can offer, I suppose. Again, I'm not saying that the movie completely forgoes the original story. All the major plot points are present, and it isn't until somewhere near the end of the film that it finally branches off into its own, and definitely in a way that is entirely fitting and unique to this new direction. That direction is, as you might guess, very grotesque and off-kilter, which is par for the course based on every other Troma movie I've seen while I've been here. Between the bits and pieces of Shakespearean dialogue and those important story moments, it's a bundle of chaos and anarchy, with every character having some issue, whether it be physical, mental, sexual, or otherwise. Thankfully, the movie doesn't go entirely overboard with this narrative insanity, finding a balance between the grotesque world building and the actual story development. There are even some semblances of honest character moments, even if they aren't as strong or significant as in the original play or other adaptations. For the most part, the movie is more concerned with its body and irreverent tone, taking the usual pompous and noble flair synonymous with Shakespeare and turning it entirely on its head. In one way, it's a fine example of how the conflicts of old can still be found in modern settings, but on the other hand, it's obviously just a way to make the story a bit more interesting and perhaps justify all the other elements added to the script. Speaking of which, the technicals of the film are equally as grotesque and grungy as the setting requires them to be. Every set piece feels like a real location, and every real location was probably found a few hours before filming. The movie as a whole is completely immersed in this scenic aesthetic, which seeps its way even into the cleaner and more posh locations, giving everything a subtle layer of dirtiness. Cinematography doesn't necessarily try for any fancy camera work, save maybe for a few hallucinatory shots, and leaves it more up to the set design and art direction to carry any other visual appeal. Editing is the same, cutting when necessary, and hardly ever using it in a more creative manner. The special effects are a highlight, with the exaggerated grossness and goriness of other Troma films entirely present, even if only sparingly. In fact, their limited usage is actually a good thing, since it lets each appearance have its chance to really sink in and add some weight to the story. Plus, it puts the carnage in focus, which is obviously a good thing as well. Ultimately, this movie feels a bit twofold in its intentions. On one hand, it's a fine example of how one might adapt a Shakespearean play for newer audiences, playing into their interests without sacrificing the heart of the original story. On the other hand, it's based on public domain source material, making half the job of writing the story easier, and further layered with the sorts of weird or unsightly details that the filmmakers would have wanted to see instead of the traditional elements. Whatever the case, it works out hilariously well, and seems like it can only either disgust you or inspire you. Something like that, anyways. Tromeo and Juliet, Lloyd Kaufman, 1996. 4 stars. I definitely recommend giving it a watch. That's it for this review. If you liked it, leave a like. If you have something to add, leave a comment. Subscribe to the channel for more reviews. You know, there are like 5 other adaptations of Romeo and Juliet out there, I think. I wonder why I got this one. Ooh, maybe I'll be lucky and get a Hamlet movie next. Been a while since I've been on a Hamlet kick, actually.